Hello everyone, my name is Amanda R.N. Rockwell. I write, read, and review vampire fiction. Today we are taking a look at Salem's Lot by Stephen King. So I originally had no plans to read a Stephen King novel at all, but that was until I did some research online and for top vampire book lists, the vampire novels that are considered like the essentials, so to speak. And Salem's Lot was one of those books that appeared on pretty much every single one I came across, so of course I had to pick it up and check it out. For some reason I never thought that, despite King being known for horror and vampires, although they typically transcend genre, are a staple of horror, I didn't really think that he would be the kind of person to write a vampire novel. I have no idea why. It just didn't compute in my head. It doesn't help that the cover of this edition and the blurb literally don't mention vampires at all. So unless you had like some other edition or you looked it up online or whatever, you'd have no idea. This is a classic case of I really should experience the material for myself before I pass a judgment type thing. And I'll say this because Stephen King's one of those very polarizing authors. He's the kind of author that people either really like or really hate. And a lot of the people I was talking to online actually didn't fancy King at all. And so I cast some unfair judgment on him ahead of time. As a result, so I mean, this should teach me not to do that kind of thing again. That's not to say that Salem's Lot is a perfect book, so put your pitchforks away, guys, because I'll get to that eventually. I'll get to that soon. Salem's Lot is the story of Ben Mears, an author and former resident of the fictional town of Jerusalem's Lot, Maine. He has a few novels under his belt, and he returns to his hometown in the hopes that rooming in the old creepy manor there will give him some inspiration, help him write his newest manuscript. So of course he gets involved in all the chaos that follows, naturally. He experienced a tragic accident in the past that has given him some PTSD, and that does have a certain degree of influence on how he thinks and how he acts, so that adds a nice layer to his character. What helped hook me into the book was the prologue, which in this case takes place after the main story but before the epilogue, which was a very interesting way to approach it, I found. So by reading the prologue that something bad happened in Jerusalem's Lot. And of course, you'll want to know more because the way he wrote it, he entices you to keep reading. And prologues are usually unnecessary in fiction, but in this case, the way it was written, it helped pull me in and kept me reading. That because I knew something horrible was going to happen. The narrative jumps around quite a bit. It gives you glimpses into the lives of the various townsfolk, both major and minor. It's an interesting approach King does. He does this to show the darkness in each person that they hide from the public eye. It's very interesting in some aspects. As the plot moves on and the vampires slowly take over the town, you watch as these people drop one by one. You really do feel as if the town is being consumed by this, like it's a plague almost. And with the exception of the main characters, no one knows what's happening until it's far too late to do anything about it. It's good that King made a fictional setting for this because the body count gets pretty high by the end of the book. High for a small town anyways. Salem's Lot is more or less a retelling of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Not original, but not really a bad thing either, because Dracula is a pretty well-known book, and has inspired a lot of other books. That being said, it doesn't completely follow that formula. It does change things up. There were some things that did throw me for a loop a little bit, which is good. there were a few things that seemed small and inconsequential, but by the end of the novel, a lot of those came full circle, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. There were also a few things that happened that I did not expect at all, so good job, Mr. King, on subverting my expectations. The book itself is a slow burn, not so slow that it turned me off. I'm okay with slow burns as long as, it pays off. But it did come close a couple of times. The way the book is written is... There's 3 parts, not counting the prologue and the epilogue. There's only 15 chapters, but each chapter is broken down into smaller chapters. This is similar to how Dracula is written as well, but I will address that in my review for that book. The vampires here are pretty standard, as far as vampires is concerned. Undead, sleeps during the day, burns in sunlight, weak to holy water and crosses, must be invited indoors. Nothing unique here, but I will make a mention about the big bad vampire who serves as the villain, who ends up consuming the entire town. He is so savage. Wow. And cocky too. He doesn't follow the exact same rules as his fledglings, and there's no indication as to why. It's not really explained. Now, there are a few things that stood out to me that were less than ideal, and the time in which the book was written, because this book it was published in the 1970s, so it's a good I think by this point it's like, at least 5 decades old. It was quite common and acceptable to have a lot of description and a lot of purple prose. And there's a lot of that in this book. Not so bad that it wanted me to stop reading, but it was enough to be noticeable. There was a few parts where I'm just like, this is a bit too much of an over-description. Just keep going. There was also usage of parentheses and run-on sentences, which were often found together. That kind of thing is not likely to get someone published these days, at least I don't think so. It didn't stand out too much, not as much as I thought it would, despite how frequent it was, though. Likely because it went along with how the people in Jerusalem's lot spoke, being a small town, and, they had kind of slang to them, and they didn't necessarily speak proper. So it worked, but it was still noticeable. My other major gripe that I have with this book, it goes with one of the positives I mentioned a bit earlier, and that is with King's tendency to give a lot of character screen time, so to speak, works against him as well. The time he put towards all the townsfolk that he jumped around between, that he wanted to make us care about, I feel would have been better used towards making us care more about the main characters. As a result, the only main character to me that felt fleshed out was Ben Mears. There were several main characters total, and I didn't feel they got enough development for me to want to care about them. This is particularly noticeable with the lone female character, Susan Norton, who, while she does get more development than any other female character in the book, as she rightfully should, by the time the book ends, I still didn't give a damn about her, which is sad. I really wanted to, but I couldn't, because she didn't get quite enough of that development that she should have gotten. She was more or less a cardboard cutout, kind of, with just like a little sprinkling of personality here and there. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I've got a written review up on there if you want to read it. It's a little less detailed than this one, but gives the same basic summary. Realistically, it's a 3-star book, which is not bad. I consider 3 stars to be average. Most books that I read and review will be 3-star. That's just your standard middle of the road. Worth reading, just not great, but I enjoyed it more than I thought it would. Because I went in with really low expectations, it surpassed them relatively easily, and therefore I bumped it up to a 4-star. In my opinion, this book is a great one to add to your collection, whether you're just collecting horror books, reading books in general, or you're looking for vampire novels to read like I am. Before you ask, I have to say this. I do not plan on reading any other Stephen King books, okay? Just throwing that out there. The only reason why I picked this up is because it's a vampire novel, okay? Unless he writes another vampire novel, nah, this is it. This is my one Stephen King review, my one Stephen King book, and that's it. So, what did you think? Do you like Salem's Lot? And if so, why? If not, tell me why about that too. Let's have a discussion about it in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I post a video every Tuesday. You can follow me on my various social media channels, which are linked in the description below. Thank you for watching. Bye!